What's up, guys? My name's Petey from Charlie Intel. So I know it's been a couple of weeks since the last Q&A Sunday episode, but I'm back. I was away for Christmas and New Year's, so therefore it was kind of impossible for me to make videos. But anyway, I'm now back, so we're back for another Q&A Sunday episode every single Sunday where I answer some of your questions either related to or unrelated to the Call of Duty franchise. As always, if you want to ask questions, either leave them in the comment section below in each Q&A Sunday episode, or otherwise use the question form which you'll find at the very top of the description below. So just use that form, ask a question, and hopefully I'll answer it in the following week's episode. So anyway, let's jump into the first question for this week, which is: do you think Call of Duty will die if the next title is futuristic and features jetpacks? So my honest opinion to this is that number one, the next game probably won't feature any kind of jetpacks or wall running or boost jumping of any kind whatsoever. I do think it will be a boots on the ground experience, so therefore I don't think we have too much of a concern as to whether or not this will happen in 2017 or this year, because of course the next game is coming out in essentially 10 or 11 months from now. But in terms of whether I think the franchise will die if they continue to make futuristic titles with jetpacks, I don't think Call of Duty can die completely. I think the franchise is far too big and it's such a well-known brand within the gaming world. So therefore, whether or not it exists in its current form in a few years' time, I don't know. But I think Call of Duty is here to stay for the foreseeable future. I think they can perhaps re-engineer the concept of Call of Duty to something slightly different to a first-person shooter, perhaps, if they absolutely had to kind of save the brand. So therefore, I don't think Call of Duty will ever really die off, at least for the next 5 or 10 years. Now, if they do a futuristic game in 2017 with jetpacks and so on, boost jumping, wall running and so on, I do think it's going to turn off a lot of players, even more so than they have with Infinite Warfare and Black Ops 3 and Advanced Warfare. So honestly, I hope they don't, because I think it's going to cause a massive rift in the community. But at the same time, there are a number of players in the Call of Duty community who do actually like a futuristic and jetpack-based game. So therefore, there is still a market for players in the Call of Duty community who want to play games with jetpacks, wall running and boost jumping. So no, I don't think Call of Duty will die based on another futuristic Call of Duty with jetpacks, but I do think it will have a massive impact on the overall consensus and just the general opinion towards the franchise. But again, I don't think Call of Duty can die in its current form, at least for the next few years. If DLC 5 became a thing, do you think we will have to pay for it as a season pass holder of Black Ops 3? So, as we know, Treyarch recently announced they're going to be releasing more content for Black Ops 3 at some point in 2017. We have no idea what this content really is for definite. We have had some theories and so on kind of spiraling all over the internet recently. But overall, we have really no idea as to what they might actually extend this extra content into. Perhaps, let's say, more single-player, multiplayer, or zombies content, for example. But if we actually see more content, I really doubt they're going to market it as being DLC 5. I think the Season Pass for Black Ops 3 was really only for the first 4 DLC map packs. So if they release more content for Black Ops 3 in 2017, I don't think it'd be actually something we have to pay for, but I think there'll be some kind of monetized aspect to it. So perhaps the DLC map pack or this DLC of whatever it is they're releasing in 2017 will be free, but I think they'll also incorporate some kind of pay model or monetization into it, such as supply drops. But I have no idea, honestly, but I don't think we'll have to pay for it. And if we do, I don't think it will have anything to do with the season pass. So I imagine it'll be something you have to pay like, $10 or $15 for, perhaps. Do you think COD will ever go from a 3-year development cycle to a 2 years? So for many years, we actually had a 2-year development cycle up until about 2 years ago, when, of course, Activision introduced Sledgehammer Games into the mix, therefore giving each studio 3 years to make their next game, as then be released in a 3-year development cycle. So I really can't see why they go back to 2 years after spending all that money and working on making sure they have a 3-year development cycle for each Call of Duty game. So I really can't see this happening. The only kind of scenario in which I can see this happening is if sales get so bad that they don't really think it's financially viable to have 3 studios working at the same time to make a new game. So therefore, they might consider going back to 2 years, but I just cannot see that happening anytime soon, and not for 5 or even 10 years' time. Obviously, it depends on the performance of the next few games they release into the franchise over the course of 2017, 2018, 2019, and so on. But more likely scenario in my eyes is perhaps a delayed release instead of every year, perhaps every 2 years, or perhaps a new release cycle where they release a big new game every November and then release a remastered title 6 months later to then give us a Call of Duty game every 6 months. But to me, I think the 3-year development cycle is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Do you think a new engine could be on the cards for Call of Duty 2017 or future titles? So, as we all know, the current Call of Duty engine is actually based on a re-engineered or kind of remodified version of the Quake 3 or ID Tech 3 engine released back in 1999. Yes, you heard that right. 17 years ago it was first released, and to this day in 2016 and potentially 2017, we're still running on the foundation of the Quake 3 or ID Tech 3 engine to power Call of Duty games released every single year. Of course, over the years, they've made some massive modifications and enhancements and just pretty much rebuilt the engine from the ground up almost. Not necessarily from the ground up, but in many areas of the engine, they've made some very, very substantial changes to the point where it's almost very hard to decipher that it's still running on that engine from 1999. But at the same time, it's still running on that core foundation of the engine, so therefore it hasn't necessarily changed in the many years that it's existed. So therefore, Call of Duty actually hasn't had a brand new engine kind of brought into the franchise since then. I know they keep touting every year a brand new engine or, massive enhancements and so on. Yes, they do make improvements to the engine, but at the very least, it's still the same engine. It's very core and it's very base, so therefore they can't really tout it's a brand new engine because it simply isn't. So, will we see a brand new foundation into the Call of Duty franchise in the coming years? Honestly, I hope so. I think it's long overdue, and I think we need something completely different to power Call of Duty as a game in the franchise. Because, of course, if we look over at other franchises such as Battlefield and so on, they use the new engine Frostbite to power their games and so on, whereas we're still stuck on the same engine from many, many years ago. So really, we have to actually see something drastically change over the next few years. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to look even more dated as each title is released every single year. So fingers crossed they'll release a new engine with a new title in the coming years. I honestly don't know when that will be, whether it be 2017 or beyond, but we'll see. Hopefully these 3-year development cycles go to good use, and that is one of the big things they do change over the course of the next couple of years. Do you think there'll be a COD movie? Well, funnily enough, they're actually working on one to be released around 2018 or 2019. So, based on the article which we posted on Charlie Intel a while back, I'll just read what it said, the main kind of paragraph that applies to this question, which is, Activision Blizzard has announced they have created an all-new studio, which is called Activision Blizzard Studios, which of course is based around creating content for films and such, to develop a film and content based upon their intellectual properties. In the announcement, they have stated that they will be developing a movie for the Call of Duty franchise, which is set to see its theatrical release in 2018/2019. So, we should expect to hear more about that. Perhaps in 2017, we might see like a preview trailer of some description before then seeing the final film around 2018 or 2019. Quite exciting. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the franchise and how they convert it from being a video game into a movie that's actually worth seeing. Don't you think Sledgehammer Games is already working on Advanced Warfare 2 since the release of Black Ops 3, or maybe even during Advanced Warfare? And isn't the real hate for futuristic CODs not starting to rise mid-Black Ops 3? So I would think they're already working on a sequel with double jumps. So that's a good theory. Honestly, none of us will really know until approximately 2 or 3 months from now when the first teasers and hints towards the next game begin. But I honestly do think that they have probably changed their direction quite substantially, given the fact, of course, during the release of Advanced Warfare, there was already issues surrounding the Exo movement at that point. So around that kind of stage, they'll be working on concepts and starting initial development on the next game to release in 2017. So Sledgehammer Games has 36 months to develop the next game after their first release in 2014. So I imagine they have enough time in the 36-month period to obtain feedback across, let's say, 3 or 4 months during the release of their first game in 2014 to then make appropriate changes. So I don't really think they have any issues with actually applying some of the feedback they've had from the first game into the second game. And since the overall reception for the exosuit in Advanced Warfare wasn't the best, I'm sure they've probably changed their direction quite substantially, and it won't be Advanced Warfare 2, but instead something completely different. So we'll obviously see over the course of the next few months as the teasers and new information starts to drop in the Call of Duty world. But until then, I'm pretty certain we'll be seeing something very different, and it won't be Advanced Warfare 2. How is the Call of Duty setting decided? For example, does Activision decide if the game is going to be in the future? So that's a very interesting question. I don't know the official answer for that, but I imagine it's a combination of the two. So I guess the studio works on concepts and ideas behind their game, and the kind of direction they want to go in. Then they pitch that to Activision, who then either give it the green light or say no, or perhaps give them the suggestions they need to do to change their concept to then make it in line with what Activision want the game to be, for example. But I'd like to think that the studio has most of the creative direction behind multiplayer, single player, the extra modes and so on. But of course, Activision give them targets and give them directions and such as to what they want the game to kind of include based on a certain set of criteria, for example. So I imagine Activision goes up to the studios now and says, hey, you need to do supply drops, you need to do this, you need to do that, because we need to have this in season passes and that in DLC, all that kind of stuff. I also imagine Activision does research and such based on what they feel the best setting is to compete against other franchises, for example. They have to consider a lot of things here, such as what like Titanfall is doing, what Battlefield is doing. And then, of course, they have the 3-year development cycle, so any changes they make is kind of like a 3-year investment of time and money, because whatever they decide today, for example, will then impact what happens in 3 years' time. So, yeah, Activision probably has a lot of the decision-making process, but at the same time, I also think that the studios probably come up with most of the ideas as to the storyline, all that kind of stuff as well. So it's a combination of the studios and Activision themselves. I imagine it's very complicated, and I probably haven't even scratched the surface as to what actually goes on behind the scenes. So hopefully that kind of gives you more insight as to what might be going on. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure myself. Hopefully, I might be able to find out one day by asking someone in an interview, for example. But either way, that is pretty much my answer to that question. So that's all for this week's episode of Q&A Sunday. As always, leave your questions in the comment section below or using the form in the description below. Also, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. And of course, subscribe for further Charlie Intel content every 1 to 2 days. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.